Afternoon, Gossip Talk Shows family. It's Nomsa here at Gossip Talk Shows. Find your own voice, late from within. With me today, I have Dr. Biget Tan. Hi, Dr. Biget.
Good afternoon and good morning and good evening, depending on where you are.
It's afternoon in the UK. It's 9 minutes past 1. So our topic today, we are talking about we're talking about grief and mentally health, navigating the emotional impact of loss. Losing someone we love is very, very painful and it's a very, very painful and challenging experience that affects emotionally, psychologically, and physically. Grief is natural response to loss. It could be a loss of losing someone through death or somebody losing somebody, maybe they have dementia, or losing job is a loss. Anything that we thought we will have in life, and then when we are given that grief, when we are grieving, losing a job is grieving, relationship divorce is grieving, is those memories that we thought that will, the life that we hope it will be, and then it will feel that when that life is no longer there, we will feel like everything is been stripped away in our lives. So Dr. Biget, you are a grief coach, a grieving coach, a grief coach, and you have worked with so many people for many years. So what was your thought when you saw this topic?
Thank you, Numsa. And yes, as a grief specialist and coach, one thing that when I see this topic, firstly, if you are experiencing a loss and grieving, my heart goes out to you. And please know that there is no right or wrong way to grieve. And many times when we have things going on, people seems to be, for some reason, eager because they want to help us, to give us advice on what's to do and what's not to do, or share their own experience. And sometimes those can be very discouraging. I have a recent client who when her father passed away, someone came to her and said, "Oh, you know what? You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay." I still cry now. Some 20 years later, I still cry every day, but you'll cope with it. And for my client, this client said, 20 years and you still cry every day. What? That does not sound like something comforting. I mean, she knows that that's supposed to be comforting somehow, somewhere strangely, but it's not. And thankfully, my clients took the actions of seeking help. And when the first round of help with the counselor and therapist did not work, she did not stop. And she said, there got to be something here that make me not wake up in pain on a regular, frequent basis, and ended up working with me and accomplish her goal to not be in pain, not waking up and every time think about the father's feeling so sad and feeling the emotional heavy weightness, so to say. But that is something that, firstly, if you are experiencing things, my heart goes out to you. And if there's something that people say just doesn't feel quite right to your heart, just know there's no right or wrong way to grieve, and you are who you are. And if you are receiving help, and you don't feel that it's helping you, even just like with this is mental health, but just like with physical health, there's no difference. My background oncology, even as an oncologist back in the day, if somebody work with me and then they did not, we do not have the result we want, or they feel that they are not receiving the result they want, I would say, as an ethical and thoughtful and caring clinicians, I would say, would you consider getting a second opinion? Now, many people don't say that. Many doctors don't say that, but you can do it on your own. Get a second opinion. And then back to the original topic about loss. One thing that I want to invite people to think about is that there are two different kind of loss. There are what we call the tangible loss and the intangible loss. The tangible loss is what the common one that we see. In grief, we call the big four. Loss of a loved one, a passing of a loved one, a divorce, loss of a job, and to a degree, if for some people this is tangible and for some people it's intangible, but it is the loss of health. Well, there are many intangible losses. And so much so, there are more than 40 different causes of grief. Intangible loss, for instance, loss of health. For some people, it's intangible loss. It's not something you have an actual physical. For some of us, it's the health is not. It's not, say, somebody's being amputated or something like that. It's an intangible loss that way. And then loss of faith is a common one. And nowadays here in many places in the world, even in the United States, in some places here, loss of safety. And it's not necessarily just a community shooting or something, but let's say a natural disaster occurred. I live in an area with a lot of fire here in the United States. And the first couple times, it was when we have to be evacuated. After evacuated, it was loss of safety. So there's a lot of loss. The actual definition of grief is the unsettling feelings caused by a change. Let me ask you, do you know anybody in your life who have not experienced a change in the last 3-4 years? It's unsettling feelings caused by a change, a loss, or hope unmet. So if you are experiencing a loss, whether it's tangible or intangible, my heart goes out to you. And just know there is no right or wrong way to feel. Your feelings meant to be unique, just like as you are.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bigete. I love it when you say loss of safety, and also you mention unsettling feelings or loss of change. Some people, they do go through this kind of grieving and they don't realize that they are actually grieving. They will try to get advice from family members or friends, and the friends will be like, you just need to be strong, you just need to just get on with it. But the truth is, if you are faced with the changes in your life, you have to face that grief in order for you to actually break the chains that are holding you in that moment, because there will be, your heart needs healing. Your heart will need healing. Your mentally, physically, you need healing. And there's so many things that you have to, your emotions, you need healing through your emotions. You have to go through, Christians go through deliverance, and some people use meditation. People use so many different things that works for them in order for them to break away from that pain, because grief is not a joke. And that's why when somebody is grieving, I know that when they tell me about their grief, they're not looking for my advice, because I'm not a grieving coach. All they want is for me to listen to them. If they do need advice, they need that advice, it will be given to them. Like one of my neighbors, he was grieving, And he said, "Oh my God, what is a cloud? You, oh my God, you made me jump."
So this comes to my mind. This is actually one of my presentation slides. Sometimes I provide a complimentary online presentation. There's one coming up next Saturday. But this is my presentation slide. And when you say grief is not a joke, some of us might be familiar with the Jokers, which is a character in a movie. I believe it's it's a Batman or Spider-Man movie, but it's quite a common character, noun character here in the United States and also all over the world. And this thing here, you cannot, I'm going to move a little bit, but so you can see the writing. Put on a happy face. So it's this movie, this character, the Joker, is a villain. And it's and if you look at the character, the joke, when you say that it's not a joke, I sometimes say if you are grieving, like you say, Numsa, some of us grieving and not knowing that we're grieving, or we're trying to be strong because every other person tell us to, it can make us a joker. The story of the Joker here, and I'm gonna get it out of here, so you traumatized by it and grieve from it. And the story of the Joker is, so the Joker actually, the story, the reason he became a Joker, he grew up in a very abusive family. He grew up in a very abusive family. His mom was abusive. His father was abusive. But he kept trying to put on a happy face, keep trying to be strong. And then because he continued to do life, he encountered a lot of challenges, and we can discuss briefly in a moment why. But when you're grieving, a lot of time it causes a lot of glass ceiling in all other aspects of your life, including with him, his relationship, his personal relationship with his girlfriend, and then also example in this person, the Joker's life, in his work, he ended up losing his job. And when all those happen, like many grievers, he ended up just falling apart, so to say, or at the moment, or some people lose it altogether. We call it have a nervous breakdown in a slightly semi-technical term. And he become a joker and causing, there's a saying that hurt people. He is so hurting so much inside that he goes out there and hurting everybody else because the Joker is a villain in that movie. And I'll get this background out of you. But it's very interesting. Sometimes we didn't think about this, but when we're grieving and when we're not recognizing that we're grieving and causing it's actually hurting us. And hopefully, and perhaps not in a way with other people, but if we keep stuffing away our grief, after years, months, and many moons later, it will turn us into a joke. It's no joke, but it can turn us into a joke, so to say.
I know. It's you make me like, I was like, oh, what's happened? Yeah.
Now I cause this loss of safety in your show, right? But loss of safety.
Yeah, that triggered me. I was like, oh my God, Dr. Piketty, what is she doing? I think that's what happens when you actually lose someone that you love. It can take a very, very long time. For me, losing my dad, I think it was the most painful moment. When I lost my stepdad, I was like, okay. And then when I lost my dad, I was like, oh, okay. So now it means I don't have daddies no more. So it was so painful. I think because I ignored my stepdad's death and then buried the feelings, pretended as I was okay. And then when my dad died as well, that's when it took me a long time, actually. I think it took me 4 years or 5 years to actually grieve. I grieved in my own time. There were times where I know I went into different stages, where the stages of in denial first. I was in denial. There were times where I look at my phone thinking that I'm going to get a phone call, thinking it's a mistake. And it went on for months. And after that, it was okay, I'll accept it now. But now it was the memories, the good memories, they're the ones that hurt the most. You know, when you are close to someone and then all of a sudden they're no longer there anymore and the silence can be too loud. So that's why it's very, very important for those who have families and friends to make sure that you spend your time with them. If there are questions that you have, ask them those questions. If there's some answers that you are looking for, you know, the living, we are not meant to hold the unforgiveness. We are not meant to hold any grudge. We are not meant to hold back. We are meant to actually communicate with each other so we can get to know each other and to just love and connect. But we don't do that because sometimes we don't want no confrontation. We don't want nothing. We just want to pretend everything is okay. We sweep things under the carpet. So with my dad, it was actually a lesson for me that the relationship I had with my parents, that you ask anything. I will make my parents very uncomfortable by asking uncomfortable questions because I want to know. And no one can answer those questions apart from my dad or my mom or my stepdad. So those are the things, the life that I lived in my life. And when they died, it was like, my mom is alive. It was like, okay, now he's gone. Who is going to answer these questions? But what my dad did to make things really, really better for me, he had a diary where he recorded everything on his diary, even his death when he was sick. I got to have that closer with him, talking about his condition, talking about his, like saying, no, sir, I'm going. He knew that he was going, his doctors have told him. And I said to the doctors, I have my daughter in the UK. Could you please make sure that I get to talk to her? So we had a chat with my dad. And there were things that he wanted to know, like, something happened between me and my family, and me and my sister knew about it, and we kept it as a secret. And my dad said to me, you guys, you and your sister, you knew this was going on. I said, yeah, we did. And I think it brought guilt because after he left, I could feel his guilty. I think in the spirit, he felt like he was guilty, that we shouldn't have known the things that we knew. But we were snooping. We just snooping adult things and not checking things like information, and that listening to people and what is going on. And so we ended up knowing anyway. So, and when he died, we had that conversation, which was tough for him. And I was like, Dad, yes, we knew about it. And it was like, well, why didn't you tell me? I was like, there's nothing to tell. You're my dad. So if somebody else is doing something, you're my dad and I love you very much. So there was nothing to tell. And we didn't see a point. And those things, the reason I'm sharing this is there are some people that don't have time to actually communicate with their children. I speak to my children. I communicate with them the history about my dad, the history about my family. When somebody appears on the phone, they all have a code. Oh, this one is that one, is the one that used to do this, so they know. So I think it's now, you see, even at work, like Dr. Bigot, like when you work with people, like when people comes and they're trying to actually understand the grief, it's nice for families as well what to go and speak to grief like coaches like you, so they can understand how the grieving works. So do you get I'm interested, do you actually get people coming to you, like families who have lost their loved ones, wanting to actually deal, or not necessarily is them who are grieving? Maybe they have a family member who is struggling. They want to know how they can help that family member. Do you ever get those kind of a situation, or do you normally get people that just want the help because they are going through grieving challenges, or do you get the other side as well?
So I receive both. I receive both. And really truthfully, if you really look at the definitions of grief, so I don't, with an exceptions of professionals, for instance, human resource personnel or managers, which I do teach us a class for this, for human resources and managers and so forth, to help them help their colleagues, their team members. So that's a completely different, somewhat different. It's not personal use. But even that, I teach his classes, excuse me, in a class platform on how to help with their team member. But aside from that, with your questions just now, do I receive people who come and that is because their loved one, let's say their children, their parents, their significant others are grieving and they are not grieving? Now, if we really look very closely at the definitions of grief, that actually does not really happen. In other words, if you live with somebody and the person is grieving and change their behavior or their mood on constant regular basis, the definitions of grief is the unsettling feelings caused by a change. It could be a change in your surrounding, including a person you love and care about, caused by a change, hope unmet. You could think that this person might be okay, but he's or she is not actually, or a loss of a loved one. If you are close to this person and know the other person who's no longer there, it's a loss to you too. So in other words, if you are in living in a situation where you live very closely with a family member, particularly if you live with a person, and the person who are expressing and displaying a lot of impact of grief are there, if you really look at it and it causing you to start to feel unsettled, now it might not necessarily sadness. The number one expression of grief is not sadness. And so it might not necessarily sadness, but by definitions, it might be impacting you and causing you to start to grieve as well. So that's why the answer is a yes and to a good degree. But a lot of time they come into me and they say, okay, I want to help my wife. I want to help my parents. I want to help my husband. And I said, surely I will teach you tools. And truly the tools, I don't do counseling, nor am I doing something like a church or something like that. Truly, grief is what we call multi-dimension. Just like you and I are 3 dimensions, grief is not 1 dimension. Grief affected what's in your mind. Grief grief is all about the heart, very little about the mind, all about the heart. But what many people don't realize, grief also goes into the cells. So it's somaticized. And a very well-known speaker and teacher and doctors, Dr. Joe Dispenza, say this: when you read or hear something, it goes in your mind. When you have an impactful experience, it goes into your cells. including the cells of your heart, so much so that when you're grieving, your heart, for some of us, change shapes. The actual physical heart change shapes. But grief goes into your mind a little bit, goes into your heart very greatly. And what sometimes you are able to clear in your mind through speaking, but in your heart and in your cells, it needed different approach. And so with me, I actually teaches you tools and skills to be able to release grief, to recover from grief from your mind, but also very importantly from your heart. And the third dimension is to release the somatic experience of it, or to release it from your cells. And when you learn that, you will be able to benefit from it for yourself, and definitely for your loved ones as well, because the tools is the tools. Yes, you might not be able to have to so-called, cause your loved one to do one or certain other things, but even the concept and the ability, and a lot of the time people learn by example, so they can see you doing certain things and then they might mimic that. They might say, oh, what are you doing there? And then, oh, maybe I should try that out. And then it will help them as well, even if they don't do every single detail of that. So the answer is yes, and it's a lot of time help your loved one and help you. And if we live, keep going back to the definitions of grief just now, if we live by the time we're adult, practically many of us experience one of those causes of grief. And many times we, again, go back to the intangible loss. Many times we didn't even realize until we start speaking with a grief specialist and said, oh yeah, that is why I behave this way.
Our behavior, I love it when you say sometimes grief is no in one dimension, because when your body gets affected mentally, it goes into inside your cells as well. You're right, every organ of your body gets affected, because this brain is mentally, if it's not right, our brain is the symbol of our destiny. That's where it holds everything. So that's why you see when somebody mentally, they're not right, it affects their body, it affects them physically, emotionally. So everything is affected. So I agree with you. I've never actually looked at it that way, the grief. Now I'm going to look at it that way. Yes.
Now, I want to interject here really quick. I love how you put that. I never hear it that way before. And it's actually made me realize our brain is a symbol of our destiny, kind of like almost you're driving. Your brain say, here where you want to go, here where steer here, this is where you want to go. This is how it is with human. And I say that's as the technology evolve, the one thing that we are going to differentiate us human from the advanced AI, give some people shudder already, like, but one thing that's going to differentiate us human from the advanced AI is our heart. Yeah. Both us human and AI will be able to have so-called brain. Go here, go here, go here. But for us human, if this body were a car, that is going to that's where we put in the program. This is where we want to go. Guess who's the engine in there is? The engine and the steering wheel is your heart. So if your heart's not quite going well, it will interfere you getting to the destinations. And sometimes if the engine's not quite right, it can influence even the drive and so forth. And that will actually be, make you not going straight, so to say, and keep getting stalled if your car have engines that's not working. So the destinations, our brain, but there is something beside the goal there if you are driving, and that is your engines. The first organ And a lot of time, the last organ to go, to the first organ to develop, and a lot of time, the last organ to go in our body is our heart, being human. And if that's not working, it's like the car engine is not working. And so just in terms of using analogy, but I love that analogy. That's wonderful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bickett. Honestly, I've never seen it that way, because I always, now when you put it, it actually makes sense that when our brain is affected, everything gets affected, and is actually is very, very important also, like those who are watching, if you are grieving, just seek help, professional help. And when you seek a professional help, it doesn't mean that you're weak. Professional helps it help you to actually get to the roots of the problem, because when we say, oh, we're gonna do all these things, you look at the problems and then you ignore them, and then you feel better. When something triggers you, then that pain is still there, then it will appear. And then when that pain appears, then it makes you uncomfortable. And that's when the long-term sickness enters your body. So just make sure you seek support. Dr. Biggett, she's a professional grief coach. So just get in touch if you, it may be just a 30 minutes chat, free consultation, just to find out whether she can help you. I think that would be the best thing, because for me, I'm a psychologist, I'm a coach. I haven't got a clue what grief is about. And it actually is I'm starting to realize that actually, when I was grieving, my dad, when I was grieving for my relationship as well, I did go to psychologist. I couldn't get what was going on, because psychology. We talk about, we learn about these things. We learn about the chemicals, the body, how the mind works and stuff. But there are some specific problems that you need to go to a specific therapist. So now I get it, why I went to 3 or 4 psychologists, and I couldn't get it. I didn't have a clue what they were trying to do, like to make me feel better. But when I actually went home and decided to use the prayer, I decided to fast and pray, activate my inner being, my spirit man within. That's when I got it. What the last woman was trying to do to me, was trying to trigger me, my emotions about, because in my head, I had made up my mind that my dad is my dad. You're not going to try to get rid of my emotions, my memories. But what she was trying to do to me is to cherish those memories, to be grateful, to embrace them. Me, I got it the other way around. But when you go to somebody who knows exactly what you're feeling when you tell them, I think he makes things really better. So I think if I had gone to a specific grief coach, it would have helped me so much time, because I was, some of them I was paying. And this woman in Henley, when I moved to Henley, she was actually finishing her degree. So she needed somebody to actually help with those who needed help. And I saw the advert, and then I went. But she was really, really good. And at the end, when I left her after 10 sessions, that's when I realized actually she's trying to make me realize actually not all is lost. I've got these memories, because me and my dad and my stepdad were so much fun. And I think it was all those things, because I had lost the people that I love, that I was closest to, and the silence is too loud. It doesn't matter whether the marriage has been 1 month or relationship has been 2 months or 2 days, the pain is the same. The grief, the pain is the same. So that's why it's very, very important to actually not to ignore that pain. I don't know, Dr. Bigot, I'm trying to actually ask questions and help. How do you deal when you are grieving? What is the connection between grief and mental health? That's what I need to understand. I know you've just explained, but at this moment, me, I can understand it, pick it very quickly, but somebody who is watching them, I want some more step-by-step explanation, the connection of mental health and grief.
Absolutely. And so grief is what we call emotional health. There is the physical, emotional, mental health. And so grief is number one that we know it's affected us emotionally, but it's also affected your mental health. And many people, including, as you said, and it's in a way, it's not a surprise. Psychologists learn things differently. Most psychologists are not grief specialists, and psychology learn about the mind. Yes, they have understanding about the body and whole system, how the whole system works, but the psychology, the focus of the study for therapists, a counselor, and a psychologist about the mind. Some are specifically trained in grief, as you discover, but most are not. So much so, about 20% at least of my clients are psychologists and counselor. Usually what happened is something happened, they tried themselves, and there is a saying, even the best orthopedic surgeon cannot repair his own broken leg. So, but they tried themselves, they go to other psychologists or therapists, and many of we hear at this in the United States chat room and so forth. And then at some point they said, this is not working, I need somebody else who are specialized in grief. But psychologists and therapists, it's not that they ill men or anything, they just their training different. And even the same thing with physical health physicians and doctors. No, depend on your level of training. The more intense or extensive the training a person have, the more faster usually they are actually to recognize, say, this is not working, why don't you go get a second opinions? The way I and many of my specialist colleagues in the clinic, but actually general practitioner, even in medicine, and particularly my background is veterinary medicine, in veterinary, as well as general practice psychology and counselor, they're not necessarily going to recognize immediately that you need it's good for you to get a second opinions. But at the end of the day, you are your own advocate for your health. Nobody else has more responsibility about your health. So if something not quite not giving you the result, then you want right away, like Numsa did, keep getting a different opinion and find a specialist in the focus that you are facing. And back to your questions about how is it grief affecting the mental health. So when we grieve, it's a lot about the heart. It is when you're grieving, most people feel discomfort, happiness, and or just kind of some people feel anxiety or palpitations or something. Again, sadness is not the only expression of grief. A lot of time it is also anger, confusion, worry, overwhelm, and so on and so forth. So when we are grieving, it's all about the heart. Now, anything's going on in your body is connected. And so much so that everything that is going on in your heart, many of us aware that our brain releases signal. In other words, for instance, you say, the brain says, move your right hand, and then you'll move your right hand. So many of us aware about our brain release signal. what most people not aware, but these are proven by many, many studies, is that our heart also release signal. So the brain saying things and the heart saying things. In a modern society, in more modern society, we are trained to listen to our brain, particularly in psychology and in coaching. You might hear people, even big name coach like Tony Robbins, the late Bob Proctor, and all these things say, listen to your mind, pay attention to your mind. What your mind telling you? What are you thinking? To listen to your thoughts. Now, what most people don't realize is our heart also releases signal. And furthermore, not only our heart releases signals, the signal from our heart is much more frequent, but also at the same time, it is 60 times stronger and faster than the signal from our brain. And so when you say it is, I'm going to change background again here. Don't be startled. And so this is, if you are able to see it, this is a depiction. Your brain is here, but the signal from your heart is 60 times stronger and 60 times faster than the one from your brain. And when that happens, guess what happened when you are grieving? So your brain saying, this is why logic and common sense and intellect does not, it does not help. I was speaking with a client yesterday who feels guilty about something that everybody else under the sun, including myself, would have advised her to do exactly what she did. And she did that for her own safety, actually, in this situation, for her safety. But she still feels guilty. She's like, I know I would get hurt if I stay in that situation. I mean, you would have gotten physically, emotionally, and everything else hurt. So did what the brain says, yes, you got to leave. And at the same time, her little heart feels very guilty. And she said, I can't stop this. I keep thinking it, and it come in my mind, and it come, and I will say stop, and you know, but then it's kind of like make me feel like my heart is racing and just uncomfortable. Well, that's because what's going on in your heart sends signals throughout your body, including to your brain. And so that's one thing. That's why it clouds. It's kind of like your brain, back to the analogy earlier. Your brain want to go this direction, but the steering wheel almost like want to go on its own. If you have a malalignment in the car, if you ever have this, you will notice that that you say, oh, I want to go this way, but it, you know, if there's a malalignment, the car kind of like wavering all over the place on its own. And that is what's going on when your heart is not aligned with your brain or your mind. Your heart, your emotional heart not aligned. So it's affecting your mental health, your emotion, your heart, affecting your mental health one way. And then it's also the other thing we know, that how grief, we talk about grief being cellularized. Grief is also actually a significant cause of stress in the body. So just like when you and I experience stress, Numsa, we know that stress triggers all these hormones and chemical changes. And grief is the same way. Grief causes inflammations. When you do the test nowadays in the modern technology, doctors who are highly knowledgeable, and there are tests that you can do on somebody when they are grieving, and they will show a different numbers. They show all these different parameters that you can look at it and say, I think you're grieving, looking at test result from on papers. And so the grief also causes our biochemical changes in our body. It causes inflammation. So many people, practically almost everyone, unless they come to me immediately, something happened, they come to me within between a couple weeks or something like that. If not, what happened is the initial emotional, talking about grief, the initial emotional intensity you might not be as much anymore. But if the grief is still lingering in the background, what they notice is, a skin breakout, a tooth problem, a flare-up of immune system, a joint things, and a heart thing, and a blood pressure and stroke. And so those are very common things. And the stress, when there is a lot of stress, changes from stress, and stress itself, the changes goes everywhere in your body. It's not like the changes, it's confined to the heart. Your blood vessel connect everywhere in the body. And so something that started out in your heart, once it's caused inflammation, when it causes biochemical changes in your body, it goes everywhere. And it goes to your brain, and it goes to your cells. And those, as even if you are stressed out from let's say you're stressed out from needing to complete an assignment at work, you kind of start to notice, if you're paying close attention, you're not thinking right about a lot of other things. You are become irritable, you become worry, you become jumpy, or things like that. And that is how grief influences our mental health, because it is, first is what we discussed, the heart signals faster than the brain signal. And then the second is all these changes, the physical changes that you can't see but's going on in your body, influence how your brain works, and that's influence how your mind works.
Dr. Bigot, when you actually say how the grief influence our mental health, and also you mentioned that not every psychologist is meant to help, because when you are in level 5 studying psychology, level 6 is when you have to choose your focus. What do you want to focus? So if your focus is not grief, why would you help somebody who is grieving? So that would be really, really difficult for somebody to say, yes, I can help you with that, because like myself, my focus is a different path than grieving. So that's why, like, when we talk about this conversation at Gossip Talk shows, with grieving, I get to learn these things. And when I'm going through my own personal problems, I get to, Dr. Bigot said this, I get to recognize my own emotions, and then I bring myself together, because I know that although I'm a psychologist, I can't help myself. So if I was grieving, I would just have to get a grieving coach. I never knew there was actually a specific grieving coach. That's why I went and got a psychologist, because I thought it's gonna help. But it did help with the other things, childhood attachment and all those things. The things that specific psychologists specialize with, I could see it was like helping, it was triggering, and it was coming out. But with this grieving business, it was something that I had to use the Bible and the scriptures for me to actually find that breakthrough. And there were so many tears. The pain, I was like vomiting and vomiting.
But you use the Bible and the scripture, but also you said earlier, actually, then some of our audience, my apology for interjecting, but right when you say that, it's come to my mind again. Use the Bible and the scripture. You also did fasting.
Yeah.
Remember, we talk about how grief becomes cellularized.
Yeah.
And guess what happened when you fast? When you fast, you have a biochemical changes.
Yeah.
If you fast for 4 hours, that's not really fasting. But I've heard from you before the way you fast. When you truly do fasting,
yeah.
I teach certain way that and so I teach a class, not a counseling. I teach a class. You learn the 5 steps, 4 prongs, 3-dimensional way to recover from your heartbreak and release your grief. And that does not require fasting, but whether it is using my tool or in this particular case, fasting, but if you're not accustomed to fasting, you want to be very careful an extensive fasting along with all these other thing, and you also exercise, Numsa. So with the combinations of those, that also is required to release this part of grief that is in the cells. Beside, like you said, you in addition to just talking. Talking is kind of like taking a Tylenol that help with your pain. You have but you need some other things, like you say. With you, it's the scriptures and a lot of other things. So that's something that, because many of people who come to me has says, I've been to psychologists and I've been to the church and it still doesn't help. Or I've been to for PTSD, I've been to psychologists, I've done about that many EMDR and I am still not working. So what's the story here? There is still a lot of time, it's the somatic part and then the deep heart part.
Yeah, everything is in here. Once you get it in here, is in the inside, it goes inside your body. It is actually a choice. I've realized with so many things where I get breakthrough. If someone tells me you got to do this, but if somebody guides me through it, then I find that everything that I do, the feelings, is a choice. And I find myself breaking away from whatever the stronghold. Because, like people say, mostly men, they think that they have to be strong because a man cannot be seen crying. A man cannot be seen, when a man shows grieving, it means weakness. I don't know where it says that in the Bible or where it says that, but grief is grief. So whether man or no man, you just go get help. That's all I can say, that whether you're a man or whatever, you need to get help. There is no such thing as you have to be strong. I realized with my relationship, when my relationship fell apart, my ex didn't play a role of being a lover. He played a role of responsibilities and keeping the family together. There's this thing where men has to keep the family together. They cannot show their weaknesses. They cannot be seen talking about their feelings, how they are feelings. That destroys a person inside, because when a woman and a man say they love each other, it means we share our feelings, we share our cry, we're going to cry together. It doesn't say, oh no, you take the responsibilities. You take the responsibilities of grieving. And I used to see my ex, and whenever there's a disagreement, he would start saying sorry. And I'm like, why are you saying sorry? There is two people that are dancing in the music. Mm-hmm. Don't be the first person it does just to run and say sorry. Give me a chance to say sorry first. Honestly, give me a chance to say sorry first. So we'd be like, because he feels he has to take responsibilities, he has to be a man. That does not become a relationship anymore. It becomes a grief, because it means what brought us together is lost. So that is a grief. So it's very, very important for people to understand that. Get a coach. If things are not going, the grieving, just get a coach. When you lose a job, applying for a job, it takes hard work. You have to learn the skills. You have to write a CV. You have to ask somebody, can you check my CV, check my cover letter? Then you have to ask somebody to actually practice the interview. You can practice the interview questions. And then you go and get this job, and then later, that job doesn't exist. It's a grief. So you need help. It's normal. We know Jesus. We can't play Jesus. We are not in heaven here. Even him, Jesus himself, there were times before he did miracles, there were times where he needed somebody, his mom, Mary, to encourage him to actually it's time, Jesus, to do miracles. And he was like, woman, I'm not ready. And it was time. You're never going to be ready. So that's why when it comes to these things of grieving, or get help, it destroys you inside. For me, I'm always I'm a happy person, but inside, when I was going through grief, I felt that part of me had died. I was a walking zombie. But when I decided, you know what, I'm going to fast, I'm going to connect with my inner being, that's when I felt alive. And because there was part of me, I felt that there was somebody pulling in my heart, because there was this dark cloud within me. And when I decided that to let it go, it felt that somebody has taken something. I was being separated by something. So it felt good. It feels good when you work things out. So Dr. Birgit, do you have any words of encouragement? It's 5 minutes past 2. Any words of encouragement, or and also could you please tell the audience while you are at it, who you are and where they can find you, please?
Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. So I am a grief specialist or a grief coach. And in terms of how you can find me, you can go to my website, joyfulrichesbeyondgrief.com. You can also simply email me. It's bottom of the Zoom screen here. You might be able to see Dr. Tan for grief @gmail.com. That's DRTAN for grief @gmail.com. And in terms of word of encouragements, as you say, it's Numsa, at the end of the day, we have a choice. The Grief Recovery Institute call it the 1% responsibility. And things can happen all in your life. You might feel certain way or the other way. It's all your feelings are valid. And at the end of the day, if the feeling that you feel does not feels good to you, if whatever going on with you does not feel good to you, you have the 1% responsibility to take the actions that you need to take. And again, with me, it's action, what we call action-based approach to recover from your heartbreak, to recover from your grief. We all have the 1% responsibility to such that we actually live our life, not continuing to hurt us and hurt other people. That diagram earlier shows that it's what's going on inside of you. It's actually reach out and affecting everybody in the same room with you. So you don't actually continue to hurt and hurting other people as well, because as we see earlier, grief is, like you said, Numsa, grief is no jokes. And if you are ignoring it and trying to push it away or stuff it away or run from it, it can turn you into a joke.
Thank you so much, Dr. Birgit. For those who are watching, and please follow Dr. Birgit on her social media. And also, if you feel that, yes, you're grieving and some things that you've got some things that you need to work out, just get in touch with Dr. Birgit and just have a free 30 minutes consultation. And if you can't get hold of her, let me know. I'll get hold of her for you, so that we need to work our things, our feelings and stuff. And those who are following me on social media as well, I'm doing my challenge with Matthew Hansi, which is a relationship coach. I'm a relationship coach as well. But there are some areas in my life that are driven with guilt. So sometimes I feel that not confidence. Sometimes I feel that I need to do this in order for me to do this for somebody is not driven by love. So I'm able to identify my weaknesses. So I'm sharing my story as I'm trying to be as vulnerable as possible, as honest as possible in my story. So you can join me later. I don't know when I come live. When I finish with him, that's when I come live and share my story. I don't know what's going to happen today, but for those who will watch the yesterday video, the hard thing that I'm going to do, like at 3:00, I have a meeting with Uncle G, Grand Cadonis University. So my homework is to do something that I find it hard, something that I've never done before, something that I suck at it, which is I've done sales before, but I'm not perfect. So I'm going to go and challenge myself with Uncle G. So that's the appointment that I have at 3:00. So I just want to be great. I want to have confidence. I want to do things with confidence. Some people, they might say, why would you want another coach if you are a coach? That's what makes me who I am, because I'm able to recognize my weaknesses and my strength, and I'm able to work on my strength. So I still need to find 2 people. I've found 2 people. I still need to contact 1 person for those who are following me with my story. So if you follow me, I'll update you later, guys. I see you guys later with my confidence story. How is all going? It's 30 days working on I need to unleash that hidden secret that God gave me, the confidence, cultivate it, and find that courage to do things how I need to be doing it, not driven by guilt, through love. So we're going to do that. No responsibilities as well. Sometimes we do things because we feel we are responsible. So I need to do things based on love. And when somebody says do this, I'm like, no, if I can't do it, nah. So yeah. We'll see you later, guys. And Monday, have a beautiful weekend as well. And God bless.
Bye-bye.